They say your dreams are safe, a haven where your mind wanders freely. But tonight I'll show you the truth. Dreams aren't always innocent. They're windows to something far darker, something waiting, watching. Nightmares are not just figments of imagination, they're messages, echoes from the void. Each one has a purpose. Some warn you, others consume you. And a few stay with you long after you've woken up. These nightmares are unlike any you've encountered. They won't just haunt your nights, they'll seep into your reality. Your heartbeat quickens, doesn't it? You can feel the air shift around you, heavier, colder, like you're not alone. Tonight, we'll dive into the depths of terror. We'll meet the Silent Stalker who crosses from dream to reflection. We'll step inside the whispering house, where walls echo with cursed secrets. We'll relive the eternal loop, a nightmare that repeats, dragging its victim closer to the flames. And finally, we'll face the nightmare that watches, a vision so twisted it foretells your end. These are not just stories. These are warnings, etched into the fabric of your subconscious. But be warned, once you hear them, you might never wake from the nightmares they create. Are you ready? Are you sure? Welcome to These Nightmares Will Break Your Sanity. Let's begin. Part 1, The Silent Follower. Have you ever felt it? That inexplicable sensation that someone's watching you? A tingle at the back of your neck, the hairs on your arms standing on end, but when you turn around, nothing. What if I told you it's not just a feeling? Meet Ethan, a man haunted by a nightmare that feels too real. Every night it's the same. He's walking alone down a desolate street, his footsteps echoing in the silence. But then, there's another sound, the soft, deliberate crunch of footsteps trailing him. He turns expecting to see an empty street, but no. A figure stands there, cloaked in shadows, featureless, yet undeniably watching him. It doesn't move, doesn't speak, but Ethan can feel it. The weight of its gaze presses on him like a vice, and then he wakes up. At first he shrugs it off, it's just a dream, right? But dreams, they don't leave bruises, and yet the next morning there it is, a dark hand-shaped mark on his arm. No explanation, no memory, just pain. The next night the dream returns. The same street, the same shadow, only this time it's closer. Ethan can see it now, its outline is sharper, clearer, and as it steps under a flickering streetlight, he sees its eyes. They're not human, they're hollow, empty voids that swallow light. Terrified, Ethan wakes again, but now something's changed. The figure, it's no longer confined to his dreams. Reflections, it's in the mirror, the glass on his phone, the window in his car. Every reflective surface, it's there, watching, waiting. Desperation sets in. He covers his mirrors, throws away anything that reflects, but it doesn't help. The shadow grows bolder, appearing in broad daylight, slipping behind corners, disappearing just as he turns his head. His friends don't believe him. The doctors call it stress. But Ethan knows the truth. He's being hunted. And then one night, he makes a mistake. He confronts it. "What do you want?" He screams into the void of his reflection. The shadow moves for the first time, its hollow eyes shifting to meet his own. And then, the glass shatters. Neighbors find his apartment the next morning, empty. No sign of Ethan, no note, no clues, just shards of glass scattered across the floor and a single handprint burned into the wall. A handprint, impossibly large. And so, Ethan becomes a cautionary tale, a reminder that some nightmares don't fade when you wake. They follow you, and sometimes they take you. What would you do if your nightmares stepped into your reality? Would you fight, or would you run? Tell me, but remember, it might already be too late. Part 2, Whispers in the House. Imagine this, you've just inherited a house, a sprawling, weathered estate that seems to breathe with its own life. But every night as the world outside falls silent, the walls begin to whisper. Would you dare listen? Tonight, we'll step inside a house where history hides more than just secrets. It hides curses. This is the story of Evelyn. She was just 28 when her great-aunt passed, leaving her the family home, a sprawling Victorian mansion hidden in the woods. For Evelyn, it was a new beginning, an escape from the noise of the city. But what she didn't know was that this house had never truly been empty. On her first night, Evelyn barely noticed the sounds. The creak of old wood, the soft hum of wind pressing against the shutters. She told herself it was just an old house settling. But as she drifted off to sleep, the whispers began. At first, it was faint, like a conversation behind a closed door. But as the nights went on, the voices became clearer. Words she couldn't quite make out. Urgent, pleading, and always just beyond her reach. Curiosity got the better of her. She began searching the house during the day, tracing the whispers to their source. Every room seemed steeped in the weight of its history. A broken music box in the parlor, a portrait of a stern-looking ancestor in the hall. And then she found it, a locked door at the base of the stairs. She didn't have the key, but that night the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as though calling her name. Evelyn, Evelyn. They echoed through the house, pulling her from her sleep, leading her back to that door. Determined, she broke the lock. The basement was dark, damp and suffocating. The air felt heavy as if the room itself resented her presence. And then she saw it. A journal, covered in dust, resting on a rotting wooden table. The journal belonged to her great-aunt. It spoke of a curse, a bloodline tied to this house and its secrets. The whispers, Evelyn realized, were warnings. They begged her to leave, to abandon the house before it was too late. But Evelyn didn't listen. She thought she could confront whatever haunted her family. She read the journal aloud, each word unlocking something ancient, something angry. The whispers turned to screams, the walls trembled, and the house came alive. She fled, but the house didn't let her go. It followed her into her dreams, into her waking hours. The whispers, they never stopped. And one day, just like her great-aunt before her, Evelyn disappeared. The house still stands. Locals say they hear whispers when they pass off, voices calling out from the windows. Some claim they've seen Evelyn staring back at them from the attic. But no one dares to enter, because once you do, the house never lets you leave. What do you think? Were the whispers trying to save her, or was the house always waiting to claim its next victim? Share your thoughts in the comments, but remember, some doors are better left unopened. Part 3, The Eternal Loop. Have you ever woken up from a dream so vivid it felt more like a memory? Now, imagine that dream repeating every single night, each time growing clearer, darker, and closer to reality. This is the story of a teenager caught in a nightmare they couldn't escape. Or was it a warning they failed to heed? Meet Sam, a 17-year-old with a secret they couldn't explain to anyone, not even their closest friends. Every night for weeks, Sam had been dreaming of the same thing. A house engulfed in flames. The fire roared like a living beast, its heat searing, its smoke choking. Sam would wake up just as the flames reached them. But the fear? That lingered, long after the dream ended. At first, Sam thought it was just stress, exams, life, the usual teenage stuff. But each night the dream became clearer, details sharpening like a high-definition movie. The color of the flames, the warped wooden beams collapsing, and then the photographs. Faces smiling back at them from scorched picture frames. Sam didn't recognize the house or the people in the photos, but something about them felt familiar, too familiar. They began searching through old family albums, dusty boxes in the attic, desperate to connect the dots. And that's when they found it, a photograph of a house, the same house from the dreams. The house had burned down years ago. It was an old family property, one no one ever talked about. The story was buried, just like the memories of the relatives who died in the fire. But why was Sam dreaming of it now? The dreams didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. Each time the fire felt closer, hotter, as if it were reaching for Sam through the veil of sleep. Then one night, the dream changed. For the first time, Sam didn't wake up screaming. Instead, they woke up outside the burnt ruins of the house, their feet covered in ash, their breath visible in the cold air. Except they weren't dreaming anymore. Sam stood there, staring at the remains, charred wood, twisted metal, and something else, something buried beneath the rubble. A small, fire-scorched diary. Its cover bore initials they recognized, SW, their own. The entries spoke of guilt, loss, and fire. They told a story Sam had never lived, or had they? The dreams weren't just memories, they were warnings. A tragedy Sam was destined to repeat unless they could stop it. But how do you fight a loop you don't remember starting? Sam tried to break the cycle, avoiding sleep, burning the diary, even seeking help from those who still remembered the house. But the fire didn't care. It found them anyway, creeping closer with every passing day, until Sam no longer knew what was real and what was dream. The loop ended, just as it began, in fire. The house consumed Sam just as it had their ancestors, leaving nothing behind but ashes and unanswered questions. And now, the locals tell stories of a teenager who haunts the ruins, calling out to anyone who dares come close. What do you think? Was Sam caught in a time loop, or was this a curse tied to their family's past? And most importantly, can nightmares ever truly be ignored? Share your thoughts in the comments. And let us know if you've ever had a recurring dream that felt more real than it should. Part 4. The Nightmare That Watches. There's a moment, just before you wake, when the world feels wrong, when the shadows shift and your breath catches. But what if the nightmare doesn't end when your eyes open? What if it watches and waits? Meet Elena, an artist whose world was already consumed by sleepless nights and whispers of doubt. Desperate to meet a looming deadline, she stayed up for days, painting feverishly. That's when the dreams began. Each night, she dreamed of a painting, one she'd never seen before, yet somehow knew in vivid detail. A figure draped in shadow, its face obscured but unmistakably watching her, every brushstroke etched into her mind like a memory she couldn't shake. Driven by an obsession she couldn't explain, Elena recreated the painting exactly as she saw it in her dreams. Stroke by stroke, the shadowy figure took shape, its form hauntingly human, yet unnervingly alien. But as the days passed, something changed. The painting no longer stayed the same. Each morning, Elena would wake to find new details she hadn't painted. The shadows grew deeper, the figure's edges sharper, its gaze more piercing. At first, she thought it was her exhaustion playing tricks. But then, it wasn't just the painting that changed. The dreams grew darker. In them, the figure moved, first barely noticeable, a tilt of the head, a shift in posture. Then, it began to speak. It whispered things Elena couldn't remember upon waking, yet the words lingered, chilling her to the bone. And then, the painting spoke without her dreaming. Late one night, as she sat staring at the canvas, its shadow seemed to stretch beyond the frame. A voice, low, guttural, spoke her name. Elena. Terrified but unable to stop, Elena kept painting, as if the act itself would somehow reveal answers. But the painting didn't want answers. It wanted her. Each night, she dreamt of her own reflection trapped within the canvas, screaming silently as the shadowy figure stood behind her, grinning. She destroyed the painting, or tried to. Fire, knives, water, nothing worked. The canvas would always reappear, untouched but somehow darker, the figure more alive. And then came the final dream. In it, Elena stood before the painting as the figure stepped out of the canvas. It reached for her, its face now fully visible, a distorted, horrifying reflection of her own. When she woke, the painting was gone, but the figure wasn't. To this day, no one knows what happened to Elena. Some say she fled, others believe she was claimed by the nightmare she created. But those who visited her abandoned studio speak of whispers in the dark and the faint scent of paint, always fresh, always lingering. What do you think? Was the painting a portal, a curse, or simply the manifestation of a fractured mind? Have you ever created something that seemed to take on a life of its own? Share your thoughts and your nightmares in the comments below. Conclusion. Nightmares, they're not just fleeting shadows in the dark. They're messages, warnings, mirrors held up to the deepest recesses of our minds. Tonight you've ventured into tales that twist reality and blur the boundaries of fear. But here's the question. What do your nightmares want you to see? In The Silent Stalker, we witnessed how a shadow could invade the waking world, feeding on fear until reality shattered. But isn't that what dread does? It creeps in quietly, unnoticed, until it's everywhere you turn. Then there was the Whispering House. Its walls didn't just hold secrets, they spoke them. But when whispers become screams, can you truly escape the echoes of the past? And in the eternal loop, terror wasn't just cyclical, it was prophetic. It makes you wonder, what if time itself is complicit in our nightmares? And finally, we delved into The Nightmare That Watches, a story where creativity became a curse, and art blurred the lines between maker and masterpiece. But here's the real horror. How often do we stare into the face of our own fears without recognizing them? You see, nightmares aren't just stories. They're pieces of us, raw, unfiltered, and demanding to be seen. They force us to confront what we'd rather bury, and sometimes they break us. But in the breaking, they leave behind questions that can never truly be answered. So tell me, What do your nightmares say about you? Share your scariest dreams in the comments. Who knows, they might be more than just dreams. And if you think these nightmares were unsettling, then prepare yourself. In our next journey, we'll uncover the most haunted places you've never heard of, places that make nightmares feel like lullabies. Until then, sleep well, and remember, every nightmare tells a story. Are you listening?